Welcome to the Game Caddie tutorials. I'm Scott Moeller. In this video, I want to talk to you about a new feature in Game Caddie version 5.3 that has to do with quartering winds. What are quartering winds? Well, quartering winds are winds that are blowing in two directions at the same time. So it's either a headwind or a tailwind accompanied by a crosswind either to the right or the left. Quartering winds are a type of prevailing wind. Many APBA courses have prevailing winds where before you begin play you roll a die to determine what type of prevailing wind you have, and generally it's 1 to 3 different types, and you set that up as your prevailing wind for the day, and then each hole has a note telling you what the direction of the wind is for that particular hole based on the wind type. So I'm going to use Sooner Hills as my example to show you how this works. So I'll come over here to the Conditions tab. I've got Sooner Hills as my course. I've gone ahead and determined that I'm going to be using pin number 1 with blustery day wind conditions, normal course conditions, and it's a type A wind. For Sooner Hills, you roll 1 die. If you get a number 1 through 4, it's a type A. If you get a 5 or 6, it's a type B. And those, again, those types only have to do with the predominant direction of the wind on that day. But each hole has its specific direction associated with whatever letter type you're using. We need to play Sooner Hills. We need to use the configuration settings menu. So I'll go ahead and click on that button to call it up. All right, and we need to change from standard to modified, and I'm just going to select auto roll, but that's optional. We'll apply those settings. Now there are 3 holes at Sooner Hills that have prevailing winds, and that's holes number 5, 8, and 16. So we'll act as if we're playing hole 5. We're not going to play the whole hole here, but need to load a hole in here to show you how this works. Okay, after we load the hole, because we're using the modified wind controls, this wind rolls menu pops up, and look up here at the hole notes, and it says prevailing wind type A is a tailwind right. Now let's assume that this wasn't a hole with quartering winds and it was just a tailwind that we had on this hole. If that was the case, we'd come down here to prevailing and we'd select tailwind. Or alternatively, we could assume that it's a crosswind right that we have in this hole, in which case I would just click on crosswind right. But you'll notice you can only select one of these. As soon as you select one, the other one that was selected goes away. All right, but on this hole we have quartering wind, so we have a tailwind right. So we come down here to quartering winds and look for that, and we'll go ahead and click on that. Now I'm going to force a dice roll here for the purposes of being able to explain things. Unfortunately, I can only do that with the first dice roll. I can't do it with the second. So I'll pick a number that doesn't have a second dice roll, a wind roll associated with it. We'll pick the number 45, and I'll click continue. All right, you'll notice that in the wind boxes now what shows up is we have a carry of 5, and we also have a crosswind right of 5. Where did that come from? Well, it came from that wind roll that was done over here on the Conditions tab. We have blustery winds today, so this is the column or table that we're using. Let me show you the whole table. Okay, and so a 45 ordinarily would be a crosswind right of 10 yards, but remember, quartering winds are a type of prevailing wind, so this is converted to a tailwind right. And for Sooner Hills, the way that the quartering winds work is that you determine the magnitude of the headwind or tailwind first, and whatever that magnitude is, assuming there is some, you reduce that by 5 to a minimum of 5. So a tailwind of 10, which is what we have here, is then reduced to a tailwind of 5. And that's how it shows up over here in the anemometer. And whatever this number is becomes the number for the crosswind, at least when you're dealing with a quartering wind that has a tailwind. When you're dealing with a quartering wind that is a headwind, of course, this is going to be a negative number. So if we had a, we don't, but if we had a headwind right on this particular hole and we had rolled a 45, okay, this would become a negative 10, which would be reduced in magnitude, all right? So reducing the magnitude of a negative number means actually adding to it, right? So this would then become -5, which would show up here in the carry column, and then the absolute value of that would show up in the right column. So it would, if we had a headwind right instead of a tailwind right, this would be -5 and then 5 over here in the right column in the anemometer. And whatever's in these boxes shows up over here in these wind boxes and can help you in planning your shot and will affect your shot, as I'm about to show you. We have another whole note here that says 20 yard, add 20 yards to the flight of all tee shots. So we'll put a 20 in there, and then I'll click the all-in-one menu, select the driver, roll the dice. 63 is a 31. All right, we'll take the shot, and the shot carries to 330 right on the center line. Okay, now we have a dog leg in this particular example, and I don't want to make this harder than it needs to be. So just for the purpose of keeping the math more manageable, I'm going to turn this dog leg off, okay? And when I do that, this shot ends up going 330 left 5. I wasn't counting on Sergio blasting the ball that far when I picked this hole. So 330 left 5. All right, where do those numbers come from? Come down here and we see that the shot carried to 305 left 10, right, with a potential roll of 45 in the fairway, right? So 305 plus 20 is 325, plus the 5 carry is the 330. The left 10, okay, and you have a crosswind right of 5, so that left 10 becomes now a left 5. And if we were to add the green roll here with that dog leg turned off, right, we will then end up with a shot that goes 375 left 5. Okay, so let's go ahead and update that shot. And I don't know where that ball actually ended up, but let's say it was in the fairway. Okay, so that's how quartering winds work. Here's how the new tool that comes in version 5.3 works. So let's just go ahead and load another hole. Probably the easiest way to do that actually is to come here. I could reset things, but I'll just load hole 5 all over again. Okay, because that will get the wind rolls menu to automatically pop up. Okay, we're going to select tailwind right again. And here's the new option, quartering wind option. And I'm going to show you the conditions tab in order to explain how this works, because there's no guarantee what I'm going to get with the second roll for my wind roll. All right, you'll notice that this box is checked. You can click on it again to remove the check. And let's start with it being removed. Okay, come to the conditions tab. Now, when you're playing, you don't need to do anything with the conditions tab. I'm just showing you this so you have some understanding of what the Game Caddie is actually doing. The good news for you is that you can ignore all of this if you don't care about the math and just play as you ordinarily would. But when you do have quartering winds, you need to give some thought about whether you want this option to be on, which is to allow LR effects, or you want to have it off as we do currently. All right, so the Sooner Hill course notes tell you to ignore the LR effects when working with quartering winds. What does that mean? Okay, what I believe that it means is that you ignore the numbers that are in these shaded boxes in the LR column here, okay? Now, these are wind effects, but here's the important distinction. Numbers in this column are impacting or affecting the shot result. They are not reflecting or associated with the direction of the wind or the direction of a crosswind per se. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Okay, so that when these numbers are in effect, okay, if this were checked, okay, there's a little message box up here that explains what I'm telling you in more detail. When this is checked, okay, this option is on, okay, and that means these numbers are being taken into account. In other words, they're not being ignored, and they will have their effect based on what direction the shot itself went. So if the shot went to the left, okay, regardless of what direction the crosswind is, if the shot went to the left, let's say it went to the left 15, and we got a second wind roll of 31, that shot would end up going 10 to the left, and then any wind effect would be applied on top of that. Well, in this case, there is no additional wind effect. But if we come down here, and let's say the second wind roll is a 55, okay, what would happen is if that shot went to the left, 15, that shot would now go to the left 10, and then this wind effect would be applied. And in the case of Sooner Hill's cornering winds, where you reduce the magnitude by 5 to a minimum of 5 for a tailwind here, this 15 would become a 10, so we'd have a carry of 10. We'd have, it's a tailwind right, so the ball would also go, be blown 10 to the right, and so that ball would then end up on the center line. So it's essentially saying 15 to the left becomes 10 to the left. You'll know that notice it's negative numbers for tailwinds. Because it has the effect of straightening out the shot. It's moving it in the direction of the center line. Okay? Whereas for headwinds, it's just the opposite. It moves it away, moves the shot away from the center line. These are all positive numbers in the headwind effects. Okay? So going back to my example, a shot that goes 15 to the left, when you get a roll of 55, actually only goes 10 to the left. This 15 gets reduced by 5 per the Sooner Hill course notes for quartering winds. So that 15 becomes a 10, and then we have a tailwind right, so it would be 10 carry, 10 to the right. Actually, those numbers should go in the second roll box here. I won't change them, but they belong in these boxes, not the first roll box. And then what the Game Caddy would do is it would put a -5 in there, all right, and that tells the Game Caddy to make an adjustment to the shot itself. That's what that box is all about. Now, I'm describing all of this because I can't guarantee what my second wind roll is going to be, and it's quite likely I could get a second wind roll in which none of these effects play out. The thing for you to understand is that when this box is checked, okay, these numbers are, these shaded numbers, okay, are taken into account in terms of what happens with the ball. When this box is unchecked, these numbers are ignored, and a literal interpretation of the Sooner Hill's course notes would tell you to ignore these values. So when playing Sooner Hills, if you want to play it according to at least the way I interpret the APBA course notes, you would play it with this box unchecked. But I can appreciate that some people might feel like, well, that doesn't make as much sense, you know, that they think, well, tailwinds do straighten out shots, okay? So, you know, you shouldn't be ignoring these values, you should be using them. And likewise, headwinds do blow the ball farther away from the center line. So you should be using them. This gives you that option. Right. Thank you so much. Hope you understood this video, got something out of it, found it helpful. And I'm going to be playing Sooner Hills as part of my 2022 PGA Championship simulation. So you're going to be hearing a lot about Sooner Hills. It's kind of a fun course to play. It's pretty challenging. There's lots going on, lots of ways to get in trouble with water, out of bounds, and the like. So if you don't have a hole with quartering winds and want to try it out, Sooner Hills would be a way to do that. Until next time, grip it and rip it.